Nobody expected Kandi Burruss to be the one blindsided this time. Not the fans, not the cast, and definitely not the people who thought every contract, every deal, every friendship was already accounted for. Because when whispers started spreading about a private agreement involving Todd and Porsha, most people dismissed it as internet noise. Until Kandi allegedly saw the paperwork herself, and everything fell apart. According to what's now circulating behind the scenes, this wasn't a misunderstanding or a crossed wire. It was something deliberate, planned, documented. And when Kandi finally connected the dots, the emotional fallout wasn't loud at first, it was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before reality hits. Insiders claim she didn't yell. She didn't storm out. She reportedly just sat there, staring, realizing that two people she trusted in very different ways had been moving without her knowledge. And that's when the breakdown allegedly happened, because this wasn't just about business. This wasn't just about money. This was about loyalty and who knew what and when. Fans are now asking the same chilling question. How long had Todd and Porsha been aligned behind the scenes, and why was Kandi the last to find out? Old conversations suddenly feel suspicious. Past arguments feel loaded. Moments people brushed off as tension now look like warning signs that everyone missed. And once the idea of a secret agreement entered the picture, the entire dynamic shifted overnight. Stay right here, because once you hear what Kandi allegedly discovered, who benefited from it, and why it was kept from her, you'll understand why this wasn't just shocking. It was devastating. The shock didn't come with a scream. It came with a pause. According to people close to the situation, Kandi Burruss didn't immediately react when she first learned about the alleged agreement between Todd and Porsha. She froze. That kind of stillness that hits when your brain is trying to catch up to information your heart isn't ready to process yet. Because what she was looking at, insiders claim, wasn't gossip or hearsay. It was something structured, something intentional, something that suggested conversations had happened without her, and that realization cut deeper than any argument ever could. For years, Kandi has been known as the strategist, the one who reads contracts twice, the one who doesn't move unless everything is clear. So when whispers started circulating that Todd and Porsha had some kind of private understanding, most people assumed Kandi already knew. That assumption is what makes this moment so explosive, because according to alleged insider leaks, she didn't. And that's where the betrayal narrative begins to take shape. Sources claim the agreement wasn't romantic. It wasn't some scandalous affair. That almost would have been easier to digest. This was business, access, alignment, a behind-the-scenes understanding about opportunities, appearances, and potential future ventures, conversations that allegedly happened while Kandi was operating under the belief that everything was transparent. And transparency has always been Kandi's line in the sand. What makes this sting is the timing. The alleged agreement didn't come from years ago. It wasn't ancient history. Insiders suggest it was recent enough to matter, recent enough to impact decisions Kandi had already made under different assumptions. And when she realized that, the emotional shift was immediate. People close to Kandi say her first reaction wasn't anger, it was hurt. The kind of hurt that comes from realizing you were moving in good faith while others were moving strategically. Todd, her husband. Porsha, someone who has occupied a complicated but significant space in her professional world. Two relationships that existed in separate lanes, suddenly intersecting without her consent. Fans immediately started revisiting old moments. Conversations that felt tense but unresolved. Scenes where Kandi seemed cautious but didn't fully explain why. Times when Todd and Porsha appeared oddly aligned in discussions that should have been neutral. None of it was obvious back then. But hindsight has a way of sharpening details once a new narrative enters the room. According to alleged insiders, what broke Kandi wasn't just the agreement itself. It was how long it had allegedly been kept from her. That gap, that window of time where decisions were made, plans were discussed, and she wasn't included. For someone who prides herself on honesty and control over her business world, that exclusion hit at her core. The emotional breakdown reportedly came later. Not in public, not on camera, in private, when the weight finally landed, when the questions started looping. Who knew? Who didn't? What conversations happened while she was in the dark? And perhaps the hardest question of all, was this intentional, or was she simply overlooked? Todd's role in this is what has fans divided. Some argue he was just trying to manage opportunities and didn't think it warranted a full discussion. Others say there is no scenario where your spouse aligns with someone you have a complicated history with without telling you. That's not miscommunication, that's omission. And omission, in relationships like Kandi's, feels like betrayal. Porsha's involvement adds another layer of tension. Their history has never been simple. Competitive moments, emotional clashes, public disagreements. The idea that she and Todd could be operating on the same page without Kandi knowing feels, to many fans, like crossing an unspoken line. Not illegal, not immoral, but deeply disrespectful. What's made this situation even heavier is Kandi's reputation. She's not known for emotional breakdowns over rumors. She's known for handling chaos with composure. So when insiders claim she broke down after discovering this agreement, people took it seriously. This wasn't performative emotion. This was someone realizing the ground beneath her wasn't as solid as she believed. Social media reacted fast. Some fans immediately sided with Kandi, calling the alleged agreement shady, unnecessary, and disrespectful. Others demanded proof, warning against jumping to conclusions based on leaks and speculation. But even skeptics admitted one thing: if there was any kind of structured understanding between Todd and Porsha that Kandi didn't know about, that's a problem. Old interviews resurfaced where Kandi spoke about trust being non-negotiable, about business and marriage being intertwined for her, about never wanting to be blindsided. Those words now feel haunting, almost prophetic, because according to the narrative forming online, that's exactly what happened. Insiders claim Kandi didn't confront anyone immediately. She needed time to process, time to verify, time to decide whether this was a misunderstanding or something more calculated. That pause has only intensified speculation. Silence, once again, becoming the loudest sound in the room. Fans are now watching everything closely. Todd's tone, Porsha's posts, Kandi's body language. Every move is being dissected for signs of damage control or denial. And while no one has publicly confirmed the details, the emotional impact alone has shifted how people see the dynamic. Because whether the agreement was formal or informal, signed or spoken, the pain comes from one simple truth. Kandi believes something significant happened without her knowledge. And for someone whose entire brand is built on being informed, included, and respected, that realization cuts deep. As this first layer settles, the story isn't about contracts or clauses yet. It's about trust, about boundaries, about whether proximity to opportunity made people forget proximity to loyalty. And as fans brace for what comes next, one question hangs uncomfortably in the air. Was this a careless oversight, or the first crack in something Kandi thought was unbreakable? As the second layer of this story began unfolding, the emotional fallout stopped being contained and started spilling outward. What initially looked like a private hurt quickly revealed deeper fractures that had apparently been forming for far longer than anyone realized. Because once Kandi began retracing steps, the alleged agreement between Todd and Porsha didn't feel like an isolated decision anymore. It started looking like the final piece in a puzzle she didn't know she was solving. According to insiders, Kandi's first move wasn't confrontation. It was investigation. She's built her career on understanding systems, contracts, and power dynamics, and this moment was no different. She allegedly went back through conversations, emails, and timelines, replaying interactions that once felt normal but now carried new weight. And that's when the discomfort deepened. Because the more she looked, the more she realized how many moments suddenly felt off. People close to Kandi claim there were instances where Todd seemed unusually guarded when Porsha's name came up. Nothing blatant, nothing explosive, just small shifts in tone, deflections, conversations that ended quickly. At the time, Kandi reportedly brushed it off as exhaustion or conflict avoidance. Now, those moments are being re-examined under a harsher light. The idea that Todd could have been navigating opportunities with Porsha independently didn't just hurt because of secrecy, it hurt because of history. Kandi and Porsha's past has never been neutral. Their dynamic has included competition, public clashes, and moments where trust was already fragile. For Todd to allegedly enter any kind of agreement with Porsha without looping Kandi in feels, to many fans, like ignoring years of context. And context is everything here. According to leaked chatter, the agreement may have involved future appearances, production access, or strategic alignment tied to upcoming projects. Nothing illegal, nothing scandalous on paper, but deeply problematic in practice if Kandi was excluded. Because in Kandi's world, business isn't just business, it's personal. It's intertwined with loyalty, respect, and partnership. Insiders claim this realization is what triggered Kandi's emotional spiral. Not anger at first, grief. Grief over the belief that her inner circle moved as one. Grief over the assumption that her marriage was airtight when it came to transparency. Grief over realizing she may have been the last to know something that directly affected her. Fans began connecting this to older tensions between Kandi and Todd that were never fully resolved. Past seasons where Kandi expressed feeling unsupported, moments where she questioned whether Todd fully understood her boundaries, conversations that ended with compromise but not clarity. Suddenly, those moments don't feel like background noise, they feel like foreshadowing. What complicates this further is Todd's reputation. He's often portrayed as ambitious, strategic, and comfortable navigating behind-the-scenes deals. Some fans argue that this is simply how he operates, and that not every conversation rises to the level of, "You must inform your spouse immediately." Others strongly disagree, saying the moment Porsha was involved, transparency became non-negotiable. That divide has fractured public opinion. Meanwhile, Porsha's silence has only intensified speculation. She hasn't addressed the rumors. She hasn't denied involvement. She hasn't clarified the nature of any alleged agreement. That quiet has been interpreted in every possible way: strategic restraint, legal caution, or quiet confirmation, depending on who you ask. The absence of a response has allowed the narrative to grow unchecked. According to alleged insiders, Kandi did eventually confront Todd, not explosively but directly. The conversation, as described by sources, was tense and emotional, not because Todd allegedly admitted wrongdoing, but because his explanations didn't land the way he may have expected. Minimization, even if unintentional, is devastating when someone feels blindsided. Those close to Kandi say she kept asking the same question in different forms. "Why didn't you tell me?" And the lack of a satisfying answer hurt more than the agreement itself. Because when trust fractures, details matter less than intent. And intent is what Kandi is struggling to understand. Fans watching this unfold started questioning the power dynamics at play. Was Todd acting independently because he felt entitled to? Because he underestimated how deeply this would affect Kandi? Or because he believed he was protecting her from unnecessary stress? None of those explanations sit comfortably when weighed against Kandi's long-standing insistence on being included. The emotional toll reportedly showed in subtle ways. Kandi pulling back, becoming quieter, more guarded, less willing to brush things off. Insiders claim she's been oscillating between disbelief and clarity, the painful stage where you realize something can't be unseen. Social media discourse has grown more intense. Some accuse Todd of betrayal, others accuse Porsha of opportunism. A few caution against overreacting without confirmed details. But even the most skeptical voices acknowledge one thing. If Kandi truly discovered a structured agreement involving her husband and someone with whom she has a fraught history, and she didn't know about it, that's a serious breach. What's making this situation volatile is Kandi's reputation for endurance. She's the one who holds families together, the one who keeps businesses afloat, the one who absorbs stress so others don't have to. Seeing her reportedly break down challenges that image and forces fans to confront a painful truth. Strong people still have breaking points. As this second wave settles, the story is no longer just about what Todd and Porsha allegedly agreed to. It's about what was assumed. Assumed trust, assumed transparency, assumed alignment. And once those assumptions crack, everything built on top of them starts to wobble. And just when fans thought they understood the scope of the damage, another unsettling detail began circulating. One that suggests the alleged agreement may have affected decisions that were already made publicly. Decisions Kandi now wonders were influenced by conversations she wasn't part of. And if that detail holds weight, this story is about to get much darker. By the time the third layer surfaced, the situation had crossed a line that even Kandi's closest supporters hadn't expected. This was no longer just about hurt feelings or miscommunication. It was about agency. About whether decisions that affected Kandi's professional and personal world had been shaped by conversations she was never invited into. And that realization, according to people close to her, is what finally broke the dam. Insiders now claim that as Kandi replayed recent events, certain outcomes began to feel less organic. Deals that moved faster than expected. Storylines that shifted direction abruptly. Opportunities that seemed to benefit others more than they should have. None of it looked suspicious at the time. But once the idea of an undisclosed agreement entered the picture, those same moments took on a darker tone. The most unsettling part wasn't proof, it was plausibility. Because if Todd and Portia were indeed aligned in any capacity, even informally, it would explain why certain boundaries Kandi assumed were firm suddenly felt negotiable. Why her discomfort may have been downplayed. Why decisions she believed were collaborative started feeling predecided. And for someone like Kandi, who has built her empire on being in control of her narrative, that sense of lost agency was devastating. Sources allege that this is when Kandi began questioning not just the agreement, but the precedent it set. If this could happen once without her knowledge, what else had she trusted blindly? What conversations had she assumed were shared when they weren't? What loyalty had she believed was automatic but turned out to be conditional? That kind of questioning doesn't stay contained. It bleeds into everything. Those close to Kandi describe a woman caught between clarity and disbelief. On one hand, she's too smart to ignore the signs she's now seeing. On the other, accepting them means accepting that her trust may have been misplaced. And that's a painful reckoning for anyone, especially someone who has prided herself on discernment. Todd's position, according to alleged sources, became increasingly complicated as the weight of Kandi's questions grew. Even if his intentions weren't malicious, intent stopped mattering once impact took center stage. The core issue wasn't what he meant to do, it was what he chose not to do. And in a marriage built on partnership, omission can feel just as damaging as deception. Portia's role, meanwhile, remains the most volatile wildcard. Her continued silence has allowed every theory to breathe. Some believe she's staying quiet to avoid escalating a situation she didn't anticipate becoming public. Others see the silence as calculated, a way to let others take the heat while she stays untouched. Either way, the lack of clarity has only deepened the discomfort around her involvement. Fans have pointed out how eerily familiar this feels. A woman with power and longevity discovering that movement happened around her instead of with her. A husband navigating ambition without full transparency. A colleague benefiting from proximity while maintaining plausible deniability. None of it is new, but seeing it potentially unfold around Kandi Burruss has hit differently. What makes this chapter especially heavy is how isolated Kandi reportedly feels inside it. Strong women are often expected to absorb betrayal quietly, to rationalize it, to handle it, but insiders say this situation shook her in a way few things ever have. Not because she can't recover, but because she didn't see it coming. And when blindside replaces trust, everything shifts. There's also the public pressure. Kandi knows that whatever she does next will be scrutinized. Confront too hard and she's accused of overreacting. Stay quiet and she's accused of enabling. Draw boundaries and she's labeled difficult. The margin for grace is slim, even when the hurt is real. According to those close to her, Kandi is now at a crossroads. Not a dramatic ultimatum, a strategic one. Deciding what transparency looks like moving forward. What boundaries are non-negotiable. What partnerships need to be redefined. And whether trust can be rebuilt or simply managed. What's chilling is how this story reframes power. Kandi is one of the most powerful women in her space, financially, creatively, culturally. And yet, even she can be sidelined by decisions made quietly, relationally, under the guise of it wasn't a big deal. That reality has resonated deeply with fans, especially women who have experienced similar betrayals in smaller but no less painful ways. As this third wave settles, the narrative is no longer speculative gossip. It's a study in how trust erodes, how silence compounds damage, how agreements, spoken or written, can alter dynamics long before anyone realizes what's happening. And perhaps the most haunting question of all is this. If Kandi hadn't discovered the agreement when she did, how far would it have gone before she noticed the ground shifting beneath her? This chapter doesn't end with confrontation or resolution. It ends with awareness. Awareness that something fundamental has changed, that lines have been crossed, and that even the strongest partnerships are only as solid as the honesty holding them together. Whatever happens next, one thing is clear, Kandi Burruss isn't just processing a betrayal. She's recalibrating her world. And once that process begins, nothing goes back to how it was before. If you've been watching this unfold and telling yourself it's just reality TV drama, stop right there, because this isn't about cameras or storylines anymore. This is about trust, power, and what happens when decisions are made around you instead of with you. And if you've ever been blindsided by people you thought were solid, you felt this one in your chest. So don't sit on the sidelines. Hit like if you understand how betrayal doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it comes quietly, wrapped in, it wasn't a big deal. Subscribe because when the truth starts cracking like this, there's always another layer, another reveal, another shoe waiting to drop, and you'll want to hear it before the narrative gets rewritten. And go straight to the comments. Say it plainly. Was this a misunderstanding or a calculated omission? Should loyalty in a marriage ever be negotiable when business is involved? And if you were in Kandi's position, what would you do next? Confront, distance, or restructure everything? Because missing what comes next doesn't just mean missing tea. It means missing the moment where people finally realize that silence, secrecy, and good intentions can still do real damage. And once that door opens, there's no closing it again.